Chinooking a little bit. Got a little bit warmer today, so the wind's really breezing away right now. I want a big hike. I just got back here and had to do my best Wim Hof impersonation and actually stripped down and hung my first layer on the tree behind me to dry it off, and it worked. It dried off pretty quick. Oh, it was freaking cold, but it's not overly freezing right now. But this adventure's coming to a close. Apparently the mountain highway pass that I need to get home is going to be open tomorrow morning, so I'm going to hunt tomorrow morning. Stop off at my friend Christoph's place at the Venator Ranch. I'm going to grab a couple big boxes of farm-raised bison meat. Sarah's pretty excited about that. Should be delicious. And I've never had it in the freezer. I've never had bison in the freezer before. I've had the odd bison burger at the odd restaurant, but that's it. I've never actually had a bison steak. I'm looking forward to it. He's got packaged there. It's gonna be, he said it's gonna be ribs, roasts, and steaks, and some burger. A little bit of everything. So I'll be doing that after tomorrow morning's hunt, and then get back home and carry on with things. But anyway, so I got my old phone again. I couldn't do a video yesterday because I had to leave this old phone back in the room on the Wi-Fi. It took forever to load that last video, but I guess I got it up. So now I'm back in action. And I'm gonna go for another hike in that direction for about an hour and hang a left and wait one more evening here and see what happens. But in the meantime, listen to this. Mountain Island Lake and Bolivia, North Carolina. Hello, this is Marjean Morrison. I'm a 60-year-old grandmother from North Carolina. I've been around the Sasquatches in two places. The first was when I was a young girl living near Mountain Island Lake, then called Shuffletown, outside Charlotte. The other time I was in my late 40s in Bolivia, North Carolina, near Green Swamp. When I was a kid, I loved the woods, and I spent time removing leaves so the water would flow better in the stream. When we first moved to the farmhouse, one of them would look into my window when I was trying to sleep. I saw the father, the mother, and the baby in the woods, and my instinct told me not to run. Once there were hunters after the big male, and as they were moving horizontally, I saw him backing up vertically. I later found the barrel of a rifle that had been broken off up by the road. There's a picture I saw online of a baby Sasquatch sitting on a log holding some daisies. I believe I took that picture in the 70s, and it was taken from away from me. In Bolivia, North Carolina, there are reports of a possible escape or release of a big cat around 2009 or so. They made the news, and some pit bulls had been attacked. I would hear growling sounds outside my window, but it wasn't a big cat. It was what they called in Florida a swamp ape. My best memory is being a little girl watching the mother, father, and baby sunning themselves on some big granite boulders in our backyard. It is sad that most of the land there has been developed. Back in the 1970s, there was plenty of catfish, and knowing my father and I, we probably fed them, even if we were not always aware. My father brought home a big potato peeling machine that looked like a small rocket and said whatever took the potatoes probably was hungry. I feel like seeing them for myself gave me a sense of being blessed, and the instinct to not run saved my life later on. The Sasquatches probably knew we were a little different and not a threat. Wow, and then here's another email below it from Marjean again. Sasquatches, North Carolina. This is Marjean. I wrote an email this morning but wanted to add some further info. The family farmhouse where my family lived in the 70s was on Abernathy Road, and we could see Mountain Island Lake from our porch. It was built in the 1880s with the cornerstone carved from the boulders in the backyard. The owners had the fire department burn the house down a few years ago. The woods where the Sasquatch family lived is supposed to be part of a nature preserve. There are some plants and flowers that only grow in that area, which I believe is across the water from the Lata Plantation. In Bolivia, North Carolina, near Green Swamp is where I lived 15 years ago. That dirt road bypass way goes all the way back to a hunting club, water treatment plant, and a turkey farm. Miles of dirt roads, off dirt roads, behind the many yellow-colored gates in the Green Swamp area. Sometimes the gates are open and sometimes they are closed. I remember it was 15 years ago because I have a Beagle Terrier named Dottie, and she was 15, and the same age as my grandson Tony. I used to sing to Dottie and used to sing to Spotty, the dog I had on Abernathy Road, who looked just like her and lived to be 15. Terrible voice I have, like a southern Minnie Mouse, that might have attracted the Sasquatches? Also, I always leave leftovers to the wildlife, feed the birds, deer, squirrels. One time growing up, we had a refrigerator full of carrots. I'll never forget the look on my first husband's face the first time he saw a possum had made a nest under the hood of his car. He was on his way to the invasion of Panama, and he was from the island of Saipan, Northern Mariana Islands, USA, where there are no possums. It had babies, and I fed it leftover hot dogs. I'm going to see family in Montana this summer, and we will be hiking, but I don't do any of that wood knocking or howls. I feel like an idiot, or like I was making fun of the Sasquatches. Don't you think they recognize their own calls and can tell the human beings are imitating them? I wouldn't go looking for them because I figure they showed themselves to me when it was the right time for them to do so. Like I said before, my instinct is to not run, and I was as afraid as anyone would be. Helped me later in life. There was another time I had that same instinct not to run, but this time it's from a human being. And if people want to know what a real monster looks like, it is Edward Wayne Edwards, dead now. And Sasquatches aren't monsters or apes, but kind of like beings of the forest. Well, and that's that. Margine, thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely appreciate that. And this is the only way we're going to learn, is getting the stories passed down to us, right? When people are in our communities. That's how knowledge flows. Not from one group, not from one individual dictating what we hear, what we don't hear, or covering shit up. This is the only way we're going to learn, is from all of the people, right? Pretty sure we proved that point at this stage of the game. Thanks again, Margine. Please email us back again if you have anything that you feel the people would need to hear or learn. Make sure you email us back, all right? New twist, old story. Hi, Steve. My name is Scott Jensen. I'm 68 and a lifelong local of the Hells Canyon, Snake River County, bordering Idaho and Oregon. This is one nasty gash in the face of the earth that is deeper than the Grand Canyon. Destroyed more than one pack frame in my life here. It was 1994 when my lifelong hunting partner, 14-year-old son Buck, and I drew November cow elk tags in Idaho's Unit 22. I had the 3 weeks off work, so I was the scout while Dawn was moving cattle and Buck was in school. A few days before Thanksgiving, I spotted around 60 head feeding down the south side of Allison Creek, way out of the area I wanted to deal with. These herds, unless spooked, usually graze a 3-circle around. I knew from the past experience that in a couple of days they would be in range on the north side Eccles Creek. I went back down to call Dawn to be up the mountain that night, and I would get Buck out of school. Screw school when you're filling freezers. Cheers to that one. The next morning, we rode our machines to the head of Eccles Creek and parked. The snow was around 14 inches or so. We headed north up the ridge to our granite perch where we could watch both sides. It was over 7,000 feet in elevation. Dawn and Buck were positioned to walk down Allison, and I was below a bit watching Eccles. One more day and they would be where I wanted them. I looked up at them and they were watching something down below them. I went over to see what they were looking at, and 1,500 yards or so on a grass bench at the snow line below was a very large, dark black humanoid. And, get this, a very large black canine. They were chasing each other back and forth across this bench. I swear they were playing. The canine was wolf-shaped, not dogman-shaped. It was something to see. It was interesting to watch the grace and fluidity of the humanoid as it ran. Dawn and Buck had convinced themselves that this was a bird hunter who happened to have climbed 5,000 feet up the canyon to play with his lab and managed to get there at daylight. I knew better. Nothing I could say for years could change their mind. Dawn finally came around through many years of hunting with me, for high strangeness seemed to follow me. My son, not so. Denial is very powerful. Fast forward October 2020, bull season. Buck was hunting solo down the confluence of Indian Creek and Camp Creek. This place is deep, dark, and spooky. I've shot several bulls here in the past, and he was standing with his back to a large fir when he said he noticed that things started to go quiet and wonky. Then he felt something hit the back of the tree. He walked around the tree and saw a softball-sized piece of granite laying there. He said he looked around and could not see any granite anywhere else. Exit stage left. We have a new number. P.S. Don't take the kill shot. I think it's going to get Western real soon. Love your shit, man, Scotty. Well, Scotty, I think that's the first time somebody has said that they've seen one of these beings ripping around with a canine with it. I think. I think it does sound. I can't remember word for word, but I have heard it previous of hearing of them running with some dogs, a pack of dogs possibly in the past. That must have been something to see, man, right? I wonder what kind of dog it was. Wolves don't tolerate much of anything or anyone else besides their own pack. Be kind of bizarre, unless he must have scooped it up as a pup maybe and kept it. Who knows, right? What a hell of a frickin' thing to see. And again, around elk hunting too, right? There's a lot that goes on with elk and elk hunting. Thanks for sending that in, man. Appreciate it. Okay. Pics. Oh, Steve, best damn channel out there. If you use this on your channel, you can use my name, David Prokop. I'm an ex-police officer of 18 years and a retired infantry officer of over 22 years in the U.S. Army National Guard. Happy going to work this morning when I saw these, but couldn't stop, so I stopped after work today. I'm trying to figure out what kind of tracks these are. Your thoughts on this? I know they aren't wolf, deer, bobcat, rabbit, etc. because there's no drag marks, etc. that animals leave. Additionally, they are most definitely not human, as the snow is about 8 to 12 inches deep, and there's no entry and exit marks the way humans walk/run. I'm 6'3", and basing my estimate, the distance between these are more than 4 feet. I have a size 13 foot. These are easily bigger than my feet. I can't figure out for the life of me what these are. I live in central Wisconsin and certainly will not contact the ass hat at the BFRO. Thanks for any insight, David Prokop. Okay, David, when I can see, that is definitely an inline trackway, okay? So inline, obviously inline, and that's usually the signature that these beings leave. Now, it's going to be tough for me. I can't, obviously, where I am, you guys, I can't share these photographs. But there's, oh, look, that's showing up pretty good. There's one there. And like I say, there's no shrapnel snow. You always have snow on top of the snow in the direction of anything, especially deer. When deer jump and bounce, they're kicking snow up and leaving snow. Snow's flying in the direction they're going, and it's laying on top of the rest of the snow that was no print in. And that goes the same for coyotes or anything else. And then obviously with elk, moose, deer, they drag their feet. Or bucks and bulls drag their feet, and they leave quite the trough, like I can show you right here. Actually, oops, I just do. You see this? This is a game trail right there. And that is elk and deer in there. And that's the trailway they leave. And that is the trail what a human leaves. That's my trackway from this morning. So that looks like a pretty crisp trackway, inline trackway. And from what we've all heard, seen, witnessed, had reported thousands of times, that's most definitely one of those upright beings, right? There's a couple other photos here, different angles, but that's the best photo for sure. Thanks for sending that in, man. You know what it was. Especially if you went out of your way to find this channel and email me, you already know what it was. Now, what else we got? Another Idaho again. Hi, Steve. I love your channel. We have several stories from Alaska, where we are from, and a few from Idaho, where we are right now. Number one, on the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska, we would see upside-down trees jammed into the ground, tree-topped soil. No way could cranes or heavy equipment get in there to do it. Our native Alaskan friend said that big remote circle of them is a sacred spot. Stay out of the circle. We would see these upside-down trees along the coast as well. Remote. Glacial silt is not something you can stand on or drive on or drag trees into or get these trees manipulated that way. What put those trees there? My Inupiat friend has stories of Bigfoot that hunt and fish in the Arctic. The ground and the water creates rectangular islands due to the nature of the permafrost. Without his permission, I can only say these beings are huge and mean and must be avoided at all cost. My friend's dad took all of his skill to get away from one. It moved fast with massive strides. They went back later to measure, and they could not together lift a stone it threw easily. It sounds like a hell of a story. Number 2, near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, we have several adult sons with experiences of being screamed at and whooped at from both sides, usually at night or early morning. There is often a pillar-shaped mist, and sometimes things thrown, and then it disappears into the fog or mist. Sometimes it is right below them in the creek and cracking big trees. We're convinced these beings are at least half supernatural, the way they mist away. That's interesting. That's something to see firsthand. Number 3, my husband, 8 days ago, pulled over to tighten the straps on his load, other side of the lake. Something was thrashing trees and whacking a tree very hard. When he looked up to see what the heck, a rock was thrown into the center of his truck. He skedaddled out of there. If it had hit him, that rock would have killed him. Nobody lives up there, nobody be up there in that weather, and he had the feeling it was very annoyed with his truck being pulled over there. When he drove us up there, he saw no rocks, no houses, no people, no trail up there, no reason for a person to have been thrashing trees or hurling rocks. You'd have to have a great arm and amazing skill to hit a truck from there. Non-human. That rock was the size of a child's head thrown from 100 yards away. About a mile from that spot last summer, my eldest adult son had rocks thrown at him from the slope as he fished in the early morning. He was spooked by the angle and the distance those massive rocks came from, so he boogied out of there. We drove to the spot in the afternoon so the men could see where the rocks were coming from. Non-human skills. Thank you for all you do to share everyone's accounts. Blessings, KB. Thank you for sending that in to us. Lucky nobody was hurt. It's amazing what can go on. I was thinking about that this morning, how on average they seem to respect barriers from the most simple, feeble barriers like tent walls. Just a tent wall. They'll stand over top of the tents and breathe on you, push down on the tent, scream, stomp their feet, whatever. Do enough to scare the living shit out of you, many people in their tents. But they seem to respect that barrier. Isn't that weird? Same with vehicles. Obviously they could just punch your arm through the window of any vehicle and grab you by the throat and rip you out of there if they wanted to. But they seem to respect that barrier as well. Obviously not all the time. Look at how many times you hear these things bashing into cabins or into houses and shit. Reaching in windows. That's not too cool. But for the most part, they seem to respect that feeble barrier that we seem to feel secure in, right? How many people stay huddled in their tent because they're terrified? I can't get out of the tent fast enough. When I think there's a grizzly bear, whatever, if I think something is in my camp, I can't get out of the tent fast enough. That's just me. I can't picture shitting myself, hiding in my sleeping bag and pulling the covers over my head. That's not really that conducive to surviving an attack from anything, right? You want to be on the offensive. Okay, what do we got? Well, I've never seen one like you have, Steve, but I have enjoyed your channel. My stepdaughter, that's another thing. And the area I live in. I live in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. She is a magnet for the strange and unusual. I've sat on my dock at night here at the lake here and watched UFOs with her. She saw a Bigfoot going down the road while driving, hiding behind the cedar tree on the roadside. I worked with the guy for almost 20 years that saw one about 2.5 miles from my house that I have now. He told me it was about 20 years ago, more like 25 now. He was hunting in a tree stand about 15 feet in the air, and he looked up and saw the silhouette of it on the other side of the clearing that he was hunting. And it walked through the clearing, walked right up to him, turned and looked him in the eyes for a moment and then turned back looking straight ahead and walked away. He said it scared the hell out of him. And I can tell now, all these years later, when he relates the story, that he turns white, shakes visibly, and you can tell he's still afraid when he remembers it. When he relates his tale of seeing Bigfoot or Sasquatch here in Kentucky. I hunted for many years in the upper part of lower Michigan, around Oscoda, and as a child, I ran through the woods constantly at the age of 8 with a Bowie knife strapped to my leg, practicing marking trails as I went through the woods, either by myself or with the friend, mostly by myself. My knees are no longer in good shape from working in the factory. I love the stories and long to be back in the woods. Thank you for what you do and making sense of moments of fear I've had on the trail in the middle of the swamp in the middle of nowhere, Michigan. And yes, the human mind is much stronger than you can believe. They have reason to fear us. You're on the right track. Sincerely, David Stevens. David, thanks for that, man. Yep, the human mind is something else. I don't know what's more amazing to watch or talk about or observe, these things or us. Humans are frickin' insane. It's funny this morning, like I spent a lot of time in my life teaching people how to do things that I could help teach them, hunting, fishing. And one thing I've tried to help people with patience and never quitting. And one thing though, I wonder if any of you have any good ideas of how to do this. How do you teach people common sense? How do we acquire common sense? Now, I'm watching the Kyle Rittenhouse, that kid that was defending himself during the riots, and he was actually offering up himself as a medic. There's video proof of it, right? And the lack of common sense surrounding. I was talking to Dave Plattis about it the other day too. I mean, it's all an unfortunate scenario, but it just made me start to wonder after. I watched Ben Shapiro commentary on that after it. You should look him up and listen to it. But what I'm getting at is the lack of common sense today is absolutely mind-boggling. And I was daydreaming about that this morning on my drive. I was actually wondering, I'm like, how do we acquire common sense, or how can we teach common sense? That's what I was thinking this morning. Because the lack of common sense today is incredible. And I don't know exactly how. I have a funny feeling that for the most part, something of no good is really trying to rub the common sense out of the human species. And the evidence of that is very apparent, obviously. But how do we get it back? How do you teach people common sense? How do you do that? I'm going to think about that some more. Maybe people could offer up some serious constructive comments in the comment section below to touch in on that. Because I think that's a very serious issue that needs to be addressed, is creating common sense. How to create it, how to spread it, and how to teach it, how to save it. Because we really, really need it. And it goes a long ways with every single topic, including this topic. You know what I mean? We've got tens of thousands of human beings. None of them connect. Almost all of them not connected with each other, reporting exact same thing. Yet there's a huge piece of our population that can't wrap their brains around it, won't accept it, and they don't even have the common sense to understand that is their brothers and sisters, their mothers, their fathers, their friends, their neighbors, telling them honest to God information, and their common sense is out the door, gone. Any trial today, all you need is one frickin' witness to at times put somebody away for life in a cage. One witness, right? We've got tens of thousands of people seeing the shit, and it doesn't matter. Pretty weird. The things you think about when you've been alone in the woods for 2 weeks straight. Oh, all right. Enough of this. Time for me to carry on and get on and close this mission. Here I go. I'll be back shortly.